to be University for inviting me to the talk. I shall be sharing my slide now. Is the slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Thank you so much. So today the topic given to me by Dr. Mahesh TR is about research writing, its do's and don'ts. So I would like to start about this with a quote. Research, 1 second. Research is to see what everybody has seen and to think what nobody else thought. This was quoted by Albert Sett. With this, I would like to start today's topic on research writing. First of all, let us see what is research. Research is a creative and systematic work that assures to elevate the knowledge stock. It does include the data collection, the organization, and analysis of the evidence that is discovered to increase the understanding of a topic of study, which is characterized by the particular attentiveness. It does involve in it two types of methods, basically. One is the inductive method and the other is the deductive method. In the inductive method, it is nothing but the analysis of any observed event. The deductive methods is verifications of this particular observed event. So moving further, let me give you a few characteristics of the basic research. Research is a systematic approach in order to capture and accurate data. Further, the research is all about the analysis that is based on the logical reasoning, which involves both these inductive and deductive methods. Moving further, it is also the collection of real-time data and the knowledge that is derived from the actual observation in the natural settings. And the next characteristics is nothing but the analysis, in-depth analysis of the data that is collected to avoid the anomalies. So if you can see, the major four characteristics actually revolve on the collection of data. So what I need to put forth here is that data collection plays a major role in any kind of research. So the next characteristics that I want to highlight here is research creates a path for generating a new questions to the study. Research does ensure that there is no ambiguity to the inferences that is derived. And lastly, the main characteristics of the research is all about the accuracy that is the most important and critical aspect of any research. So these are the few characteristics of the research, which is to be managed by any of the research scientists. Now, I would like to give you a few tips on the quality and the accurate research procedure. Firstly, we have to try to identify the key trends or the key issues that is currently revolving. We need to describe it in a few sentences. Secondly, we need to keep track the frequency with what each of these findings do appear, the main findings, how it appears. So, and thirdly, we need to make a list of all these findings from the most common to the least common. So after we make all these listings, the next step is to evaluate the strengths, the weakness, and what is the threats and the opportunities that is to be expected. Fifth point is prepare for the conclusions and also in parallel, what is the recommendations that we can put forth for about the research study. Acting on the strategies. And then the seventh point is looking for the gaps in the information. Consider that doing the additional inquiry if at all it is needed. And this filling of these gaps plays a major role when we go towards the accuracy of the research. last but not the least, always we have to plan to review the results and consider the efficient methods in order to analyze and interpret the results. These are the main few tips that I would like to put forth for the achieving the quality and the accuracy in our research work. So let me conclude in a very brief. Research is something that is more than the scientific principles and discoveries that we are putting forward. It is about sharing these discoveries with the public and the fellow researchers. Researchers must publish their work in journals or in conferences. Yes, for all this publishing, the very key main factor is strong writing. So strong writing is a key to making the research to be more powerful and accessible. And therefore, this presentation is all about the rigors of research, but the demands of research writing. Let me give you the overview of the research paper structure. What a research paper should do. It's nothing but sharing the knowledge that is gained about a specific area of study, showcasing how the study fits the current science. We need to disclose to the public about that important scientific activity that is performed and explaining clearly without any ambiguity the context of the study involved. What are the key factors to consider when we are drafting a research paper? Coherence to be maintained while writing. We need to maintain the relevance and the clarity when we are drafting. Grammatically and logically correct sentence does play a major role. And no repetition of any information. Once we draft a topic, once we explain a concept or our problem statement, we do not have to repeat it further in any of the sections. Organization of the paper makes a very major role. The flow should be such a way that it attracts as many readers and researchers that they are reading the paper. Conform to the formatting guidelines and other style conventions of the journal to which you are submitting. Every journal, we all know that it has their own templates, it has their own guidelines. So adhering to their guidelines of their journal before submitting is also plays a major role. Checking before submission, the guide for authors section of the journal or the conference is at most important. So moving further, let me give the structure of a research paper. So how is this anatomy of this research paper? So basically, there are main 4 sections in any research paper. That is the introduction, the methods, results, and discussion. Apart from this, whatever the other sections that comes, the related work, literature review are also has to be drafted, but these play a major role in acceptance and rejection of a research paper. Firstly, introduction. It describes what is currently known. And secondly, detail on unknown information, that is a research gap that needs to be filled. And thirdly, how and why this gap needs to be filled. Basically, these 2 points are filled in our related work section. Fourthly, the methods. What is that approach or the strategy that is, or the algorithms or the techniques that is involved to analyze or to represent the solution to the problem statement. 5th point is the results. What are the results that we have derived for applying the specific approach or the algorithm? And 6th is about discussion section, which has to be explained in a very broader manner, in detail, specifically with clarity, the obtained result by filling the gap that we would have told in the introduction, methods, and results. And lastly, the conclusion. Conclude it in such a way that we do not copy the content that is written in the introduction or in the method section. We just have to conclude in reframing the sentence in a concise manner and also put forth the future enhancement that is required for this particular problem of study. So as you can see on the right side, there is a diagram which points on the triangle. So here it is very evident that the method section is very narrowed down. Okay, the fourth one, the method section. Usually the method section will be very accurate and very precise. And the broader way is given for the introduction and the discussion. So this is what is I wanted to highlight to you, how the research paper is to be drafted. The general structure of the scientific research paper, as I told before, is IMRD, which plays a major role in the organization of the paper. Introduction, methods, results, and discussion. The information moves from broader to specific and to broader again, as seen in this diagram, the previous diagram. The introduction and discussion which takes the most room in your paper, and the methods and results usually being the shortest, at most focused sections. Now let me go in brief to one of these sections and give you what is that content that we are going to put into these each sections. Discuss the problem that is to be solved is what comes in our introduction section. And secondly, describe where the research fits into the current science. Basically, the background and the context of the study is to be described in this introduction section. The use of the primary literature along with the citations and summarizes the current understanding of the problem. That is basically, it's nothing but the literature review. That also I have put inside the introduction section. I'm not broadly specifying or talking more about this literature review today. So when usually is written this introduction section, this is what is majorly we all have to know it. So usually introduction is written at the last after the conclusion, but before the title and the abstract. Moving further, the next section comes as the method section. So what does it do? It does tell us how we did carry out the study, what are the materials or the methods of research and the analysis was adopted. So when do we write this section then? This is the first section that has to be written when you have started to draft the paper, but it has to be written after we prepare the figures and tables that is exactly required for this particular study. The result section, the third section. So it explains the important findings of the study that helps to answer the research questions or the hypothesis, and it clearly addresses the purpose of the problem statement. This section is written after the method section, but before the discussion or the conclusion. Now moving further to the next section, that is discussion or conclusion section. So what does it involve? It explains about the findings and what are the implications, the importance, and the both of the specific area of research in a very broader context. It includes even the limitations of the study that is involved and discuss the possible future research that is needed to answer the research questions. Basically, it is a understanding that we do not include the limitations of the work that we have carried out. Dear colleagues, actually it is, what is the thing is that putting a line about the limitations of the work that approach or the work that is carried out is also a very, it is recommended in this particular section, that is in the discussion section. So when is usually written in this, do we write this particular section? It is after the result section, but before the introduction section. Now let me go in brief about how do we compose these research paper sections. Always it is advisable to go back through the paper after one section is finished and correct or change the another part. But by composing in this order, we will be sure to include any of the important information that we have missed. Always note that method and result sections, they are written first, as I mentioned before. The reason for this is because you will not be changing or adding these sections after you have evaluated your research. They represent the core data of the study. So in the composing, the first thing, as I told, is prepare the figures and tables. Because the research paper does involve some figures, tables, and other graphic representations. They are the core data because they are usually the numbers representing the findings and methods employed. So for the detailed explanation of preparing and formatting figures, check out the few sites. I would like to also put it in the chat box later if it is needed. So usually, these are the guidelines that has to be followed in order to prepare the figures and tables, because high resolution figures is always recommended. Next, in the writing the method section, describe how the experiment was done. Give a rationale for why the specific experimental procedure was chosen or adopted. Describe what was done to answer the research question and how it was carried out. So explaining the result analysis is what basically is important in this method section. So how is this method section organized? So this organization consists of 4 important topics. That is, describe the materials that you have used, and if you have collected the data, how did you collect the data? What was the sources of collecting the data? Give the proper references to that with the citations. Explain how it was prepared. Explain how the measurements or the calculations were carried over, and explaining any kind of the statistical methods that is involved in order to analyze the data that is collected. So then step 3 is the results. The direct results of the research should be presented here. No result has to be taken from the other studies. This is essentially an analysis of the data explained in sentence form so that it is easier to read and put into the context. The result section should include the following: the very basic, very important, the findings that is presented in the same order as explained in the method section. So we have to give the findings as per the approach or the techniques that we have applied one after the other. The data presented in tables, charts, graphs, and other figures are to be detailed here. Reports on the collection of the data or any kind of other data analysis or collection that has to be reported here. Data that corresponds to the central research questions or the secondary findings, all this will be detailed in this result section. Moving further, very important thing is the grammar guidelines for the results. When referencing figures, use the present tense, which is at most important. When discussing events of the experiment study, use the past tense. So I repeat, this is very important because this is what usually we do, forget to use such kind of grammar, when we are framing the sentences. So when referencing the figures, the present tense has to be considered. And when discussing the events of the experiments or the study, use the past tense. Passive or active voices are generally accepted, but consistency is most important. If you're using the active voice, it's better to continue it in that manner. Cite the figure or the table every time that you reference it, just as we would do for the another text. Step 4, that is discussion, conclusion writing. So this section responds to the question, what do the results mean to the, that whatever we have obtained it. This section is very easy to write, but it is very difficult to write in a very detailed manner with clarity. It requires more than a simple analysis. You have to interpret and sell the data to the journal and researchers, explaining how important your findings are. So this is where is the important aspect of any writer who is writing a research paper. In fact, the many manuscripts are rejected because the discussion section is weak. So please make a note that you analyze the results and, by including many graphs or tables. So these are the different types of plottings that you can give in order to give the better understanding of the results that is obtained for the study. In the discussion section, you need to critique the study that is adopted. So be honest about the effectiveness of the design, suggest any kind of modifications or the improvement also that can be involved for the study. Also try to answer the question, did the study contribute to the knowledge in the field or not? How is the study contributing? So a few lines on this is to be drafted in the discussion section. Discuss the impact of this research on the related research within the domain. Step 4 here in the same is pre-writing the questions to answer for the discussion. I'm giving this lot of importance for this particular section because at most it is very important, which has to be elaborated because we would have done the research work, but we wouldn't be performing the broader analysis. So that is what has to be there in this section. How do these results relate to the original question or the objectives that we would have listed in the introduction section? So basically, we have to map to the objectives when we are giving the clarity on the result analysis in this discussion section. Do the data support the hypothesis? Are the results consistent with what other investigators have reported? So that is what we compare with the related works. How is our work more, progressive compared to the related works? Discuss the weaknesses and discrepancies, if any it is there. It is not at all a mistake, or it is not to be considered as, it is incorrect to write or few lines on the weakness part of it. Is there another way to interpret the results? Think about it. If there is another way, please kindly add it in this section. What other further research would be necessary to answer the questions raised by the results? So in the organization of the discussion section, the discussion section is more open than the results and methods section, but should focus first on what is most important and then move towards what is less important of the problem. The first paragraph should summarize the process, then the results and overall purpose of the study. The second paragraph should answer questions about the limitations and potential flaws or the shortcomings of the study. The third paragraph should focus on the successes of the study and highlight the method or the strategy that has yielded the good or the best results or those that is closely hypothesized. Compare the results of different methods and assess which was more fruitful and why. In subsequent paragraphs, discuss the implications of this research and compare it to the results of other studies. This is the other section where you can cite the related studies to show how your study compares. The last one is a conclusion section. The conclusion paragraph offers you a chance to briefly show how the work advances the field from the present state of knowledge. It does add a sort of exclamation point at the end of the paper and does make it memorable as well. So add a justification for your work here, as well as indicate extensions and wider implications over here. As well, you suggest any kind of future studies or that can be adopted for the current going work. Do not simply repeat the introduction or abstract here. Extend the claims or the questions that is raised in these sections. Now, what are the do's and don'ts for this discussion or conclusion section? Don't be too broad about the impact of the results. You have to set the limitations and work around it. Don't include new terms or ideas in this section. They should be presented in the introduction. And be specific. So meaning to say, instead of telling high temperature or low rate, just give us specifically the values so that you are precise. Step 5, how do we write the introduction? The introduction section must be the most important section of the body of your paper, and it does come first and introduces what is the problem statement, telling the readers why this work is important. So a good introduction should establish the context of the work, state the purpose of the work in the form of the hypothesis, a question, or the problem that is investigated. Do provide the aims and rationale for the approach that is adopted for the particular work. So the pre-writing questions to answer the introduction section. What is the problem that is to be solved? The background and the problem. What do we know about this problem? That is basically the literature. Are there any existing solutions to this? What are the limitations or the gaps in knowledge of existing solution? What do you hope to achieve with this study? So these are the few things that has to be listed in the introduction. So how is the organization of the introduction then? Background information, motivations, key primary literature, the hypothesis or research problem that is being investigated, and finally, what is the approach and the rationale. So the contributions that is given for the problem will be listed at the last of the introduction section. Improving the quality of writing. So this is another important part of composing a research paper. So the very basic and important thing to be known is avoid grammar and style errors. Misuse of article or determiners. So basically articles, we do misplace when we are writing a and the determiner words such as this, that, every, each, which, and that. So all these has to be put forward in a proper place. The most common issue concerns knowing which determiner to use or which one to omit and when to do it. So this has to be avoided. Nominalization and wordiness. So that is delete the prepositions and articles and reduce the phrases to one word. I've just want to give you a small example for this nominalization. He must make a decision about what to do. Usually now this sentence, as you observe, it takes 9 words. Yes, it can be reduced to 7 words. He must decide about what to do. So basically, when you first draft the paper, you might not be in a position to do this. This is the best when we complete the section and when we read the sections that we have drafted. That is when we can make such kind of additions and improvise any kind of errors that we notice. Usage of past and present tense. Here, when we are drafting the research paper, the very 3 basic verb sentences are to be used. One is present, that is simple present, simple past, and present perfect. So always it's better to use present when discussing general scientific facts. We should never use continuous tense. So this is what I wanted to bring, picture about the grammar mistakes that usually being seen in the paper. Always try to use the present tense. That is when we are discussing the facts, the general scientific facts. Like for example, here, one of the statements that I've given here is insulin and glucagon regulates blood glucose level. So regulates is the present tense. The simple past is generally used to discuss events that have been completed in the past at some distinct time or a place. So say, for example, you can take the scientist in Wales discovered a new enzyme in the liver. Now to the next tense, that is the present perfect tense. Usually it is less frequently used, and if it is used, it is to refer to the events or actions that have taken place at some unidentified time in the past, or have started but are still ongoing, or even if they would have been recently, completed. For example, unlike recently, researchers have analyzed this kind of data using chi-square statistics. So this is all about this composing of the different sections in the research paper. I hope you got a good knowledge about each of the sections and elaborating the paragraphs that has to be drafted and kept in note of it when we are drafting it. Now, moving further, a few points on the research ethics. What are the do's of the research ethics? Maintaining a good record of all the research activities that are carried over and report the data as carefully and objectively as possible. Respect the intellectual property, the privacy, and the confidentiality, and give proper credit for any contributions from the other researchers. This is very important ethic that has to be followed. What should not be followed? Do not do any kind of fabrications, manipulations, or misrepresentations of the data. Do not use any external research data, even if it is unpublished, without permission. Do not try to support irresponsible publication practices. The main goal should be to advance the science and share the knowledge within the community. Moving further, I would like to give you what is the do's and don'ts of the research paper. Let me first talk about the don'ts, and then I move to the do's. So what are the don'ts that we have to keep in mind when we are writing the research paper? Do not make use of the words like, in my opinion, I believe, or I think. It's best to use, it is recommended. It is recommended. Do not use the first person pronouns, I, we, me, our, all this. Do not start a sentence, well, just don't. Communicative English should be avoided. Do not make up stories and add unnecessary details because we have to increase the length of the paper or to justify a particular point. So stories should be strictly avoided. Do not make general statements. Present and write precisely, specifically what you mean to tell, what you mean to convey to the readers. Do not exceed the mentioned word limit. Following the guidelines that are specified for every journal is very important. The number of pages, including the references, all this matters a lot. Never cite the Wikipedia as a reference. Do not forget to mention the references of the source for the supporting material. Now moving to the do's. What should be carried over when we are drafting? Always use the language such that the ideas are presented clearly without any ambiguity. As told before, do not write any lines in order to extend what has to be represented. Present your ideas and methods used in the research. Point out the observations to justify your research work. Make sure the data, figures, formula, etc. you're using is correct. Check for the sources from where you have used, and please do cite the sources, sources from where you have derived any kind of data. Try to write the sequence so that the readers can understand the flow of the research that is carried out. Ensure to carry out the test with sufficient number of test cases. If more number of test cases is adopted, yes, we will have many analysis for the results that we can explain in the discussion section. Maintain all the resources carefully and cite the references. This citation is very important, and this has to be carried out very clearly and cross-verified also after we have completely drafted the reference section also. Check for any kind of spelling, punctuation, grammatical errors. So reread the sections, reread the first draft and improvise. And I confidently say that every time you reread your own drafted paper, you improvise it to every 10% of it. Finally, I'm moving to the last part today's talk. So it is, I thought, let me give you a small tips for writing a good research paper. Tips for writing the good research paper. First tip, carefully choose the topic, and please choose the topic after a detailed study has been carried over. Secondly, select reliable, relevant sources for the data, collection of data, representation of data, because data plays a major role for any kind of research. Step 3, define the problem statement clearly, write your problem statement, and then proceed. Step 4, create an outline of your study. Outline the tables, the figures, the techniques, the strategy or the approach that is adopted to attain the accuracy of the research. After completing the first draft version of the paper, read it thoroughly, rewrite wherever it is required. The last, step 6, is proofread the paper. For this, you can take the help of your friends or colleagues to read the paper so that it can be well understood and the flow is well maintained. So here, when you proofread, you will also make sure that relevant references of the data has been carried out. So with this, I would like to end the talk, and it's like creating the new knowledge through the research writing, and we gain an additional knowledge whenever we draft a research paper. So with this, I would like to end. Happy research writing. So I'm open to any questions. So does anybody have any questions? Mahesh sir, should we take the call? Preeti ma'am, anybody here?
Yeah, I think I'm getting some comments.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there is no question, but
Okay.
someone is writing that it was a very nice session.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, can we write a paper for just throwing an idea or concept? Yeah, this is a question from Sri Harsha.
Okay. Yes, Sri Harsha said that the thing is, the idea of concept can be written when we are projecting the paper for a conference. Usually it is where the conferences will give a lot of importance to the new ideas. You have the reviewers to scrutinize the ideas, and even when we are presenting, this can be a very good very good confidence for us to take it forward to carry out the research with applying the methods and strategies, and then finally project it to a good journal. So idea, concepts, and all this can be done by projecting it in a conferences. Any more questions?
Someone is asking what can be a book chapter, conference, journal, and research paper, please.
So conference, I just told, if there is an idea that is emerged and there is a novelty point in that, and it is addressing the current scenario, and not many papers has been published in those ideas, it's better to go towards the conference and gain the confidence as once it is accepted, that too in the flagship conferences which are happening in worldwide. So these provide you a lot of confidence once we present the papers. Yes, book chapters. Yes, we do write book chapters, which we gain a very deep analysis and for the one kind of a problem along with the results and the analysis part. So book chapter and journal is almost the same, but I do prefer writing more of the journals. And yes, if it is published in journals, we do get a lot of credits and citations is what is I prefer.
Madam Sri Harsha is again asking, most of the papers contains comparative results, but how a new concept can be done?
So the papers comparative results is what is required as a mandatory when we publish in journals. So these new concepts, it can be, that's what I told, when we project to the conferences, they do not expect you to compare in deep analysis with the related works. So the best is about going towards the conferences when those ideas or you have the papers on that.
And Mr. Pavan Tolarkar is asking how to, problem statement is the first step. So how to write the first
how to
step
choose.
to write, but I think you have answered this question, right?
Yeah. So problem statement choosing is that's what I've told very before. Please do the current study and analyze the issues. What is the current issue, the current problem that is being faced. Based on that, you have to choose the problem statement. And to be very sure that problem statement has a novelty point, we have to do some kind of survey and then be confident ourselves. This is a problem statement where not lot many works are being done. So I can carry over the work on this. So we should not finally in the mid of the carrying over the work, we should not end up in in a conflict where we already seen somebody has published that the work on this particular problem statement. If that is the case, then immediately if you come into that scenario also, we have to immediately change the strategy or the method that can be adopted to give the solution to this. So I see some about publications, much more explanation needed. That is seeing in the chat box, sir. So what kind of information do you need about publications? Please let me know. It is by Nanda MB. Sometimes, so Sri Harsha has another question. Sometimes the idea we get is developed elsewhere in the world. For a PhD researcher, it becomes very challenging for gain new knowledge, which is unique. How shall a newbie of the research? A very right question. I will answer this question to you, Mr. Sri Harsha. The problem here is we start to analyze the research problem after we define it, we carry forward. Yes, the same problem will be faced by many of the research scholars. The point here is when you see that the publications are happening too many for the problem statement that you have considered, please try to see that you develop a different scenario or the latest technology that can give you the solution to your research problem. Okay, the research problem is a current issue that that is why you would have chosen that research problem. So if that you would have come to a level where you cannot change the research problem. So you are confident that it is a current issue which has to be addressed. So now change the strategy of giving a solution to this research problem. So that is what I advise to you. Should anyone require to have programming knowledge like Python or Java programming knowledge? Yes. Knowledge of programming knowledge is very important because we need to give the strategies, to give the approach. We need to know the current trends and what is being, the new techniques or the new algorithms that are implemented. So yeah, a little, I mean to say, yes, you need to have this programming knowledge, specifically Python or Java. Yes. So Nanda MB, how to publish papers with index? So you mean to say with a high impact factor? Is that what you mean,
Yes,
Mr. Nanda? Okay. So A very good question. Indeed, yes, you need to publish your work once in a year, at least in a very good reputed journals. Okay. So whenever you choose journals, because we forward the paper to a journal, it get rejected. Please do not lose heart when it get rejected. There are thousands and thousands of journals where you can go ahead, which you feel is relevant. How do you feel the journal is relevant? So you have to read the aim of this particular journal, the scope of the journal. So basically, they usually reject it if it is out of scope. They say that it doesn't match the scope, you know. So if that is the case, the best approach is whenever you select a journal, please read the aim and scope of it, its indexing, where exactly it is, in which database it is, Clarivate or Web of Science, Scopus. All this is what to be seen. Usually, Schemago and Clarivate are the good websites to analyze these, journals. And usually Scopus, if it is out of indexed and all, you get to know through Schemago and Clarivate analysis. Please do the survey of this and get a fair knowledge on the journal when it was started its first publishing. All these data has to be gathered, ma'am. Otherwise, then only it is worth forwarding the research paper to that respective journal, whichever you're aiming for. Can you, so Sriharsha sir has got, can you suggest any kind of tools that will solve the problem of defining mathematical modeling of a research problem? So basically, the best tool that I adopted to solve the approach is write an algorithm. You know, the algorithm approach of writing the algorithm in a research paper, along with converting those, whatever the techniques that we have adopted into the mathematical form through the algorithm is the best and easy way to convince the reviewers. Which journals are preferred, UGC, CARE, Scopus, or Web of Science? The best preferred is Web of Science. So then the second is Scopus. Yes, it is also preferably good. Yes, UGC CARE, you can go ahead, but when your work is very on the minimal level of novelty, so or you're giving a review to some kind of work that you have done, you can just go ahead with UGC CARE. Yeah. So any free publications available, sir? The subscription journals are the best to approach instead of if you're not going for the open access journals. Open access journals has got APC charges, and but there is an advantage of going to the open access journals because their database is very strong, and so our paper is being viewed by the worldwide, and your citations improves a lot. So there is a plus point in open access journals, and subscription journals are the ones which you don't have to pay anything, but it does take quite a long time to get the acceptance and the publication that is there. Okay, some tips needed for SCI kind of journals. Okay, the tips is please follow whatever the sections that I detailed in the slides today's talk. So please try to follow all that, and each section has to be detailed and without any ambiguity and no repetition. Try to eliminate as much as possible the grammatical, spelling mistakes, punctuation, spacing, all this. And whenever you're forwarding to any journals, ensure that you have given the discussion part, that is analysis of the result. If it is very strong, that is also a best approach for SCI journals. Basically, they require you to compare your approach with the other algorithms, other techniques, and again, compare it with the related works. And a last few lines in the conclusion, you have to tell how exactly is your work better compared to the other works. Those words is what matters a lot to get published in SCI journals. Madam, if we required any defined algorithm like DES or AES, can we use them as it in our research? Will it not be plagiarism? Sir, actually the point here is you will not be using directly the only one algorithm to give the solution. So now to give the solution, you will be using a combination of techniques, a combination of algorithms. So your approach to solve that particular problem statement will be a combination of techniques. If that is the case, then it is not at all a plagiarism. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Vijay Kumar sir. Thank you, sir. So I don't think so. Any more questions?
Thank you, ma'am. I sincerely take a moment to express my gratitude for enlightening and thought-provoking speech and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Internet connection is not stable. Before going to the next speaker, I would request everyone to join the WhatsApp group. The link is available in the chat box. Now, I would like to call upon next speaker, Dr. Vivek. He is a seasoned educationist working as a research fellow in Cisco NAS Corporation Laboratory at the National University of Singapore. With over 15 years of experience in training and research, his areas of expertise include artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, distributed systems, cloud computing, computer networks, and agent-based computing. Now, I request Dr. Vivek sir to share his views.
Thank you, Preeti. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Vivek sir, you're audible.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to connect back. Thank you, Rupashri ma'am, for nice presentations. Hope you got a lot of queries from the participants.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Thank you.
Just give me a minute. I'm trying to share my screen. Before we start the session, I just wanted to understand how many of the audience are just started your PhD? Can you give a quick hand raise? If you have just started maybe a year, or let's say probably 1 year or 1.5 years, just doing your coursework or kind of. Okay. So they are around maybe 6 to 10. Okay. So how many of you are students? Can I see a quick hand raise? Okay. Good. Thanks for the brief introduction, Preeti. Thank you for everyone who have given the hand raise. So before getting into the presentation, or let's say today's talk, I just wanted to set the platform saying that we're not going to talk in detail about any algorithms. We're not going to talk in detail about any tools or packages. We will be just trying to explore what are the possible areas for AI in the healthcare sector. And I will also be giving a couple of works, what we are doing as a research fellow in our lab. And along with us, there are a couple of research engineers part of these activities. So probably I'll put them as a use cases, what we are trying to develop and what we are trying to improvise in our lab. Again, these are all just for information. We don't want any claims from this, or we don't want any kind of derivations from this. All right. Okay. And that's a reason, probably the disclaimer. This is completely only for the information purpose. We don't want, if you want, probably I can share this slides in the WhatsApp group, what has been created just now, just for information purpose. Kindly, probably, you may start working on that, but see to that it is not plagiarized, or it is not replicated as it is, which is something like the intellectual of a particular organization. So that's a reason I will not be going in deep. Probably I'll give you insights of what we are working currently in the lab. Again, keeping healthcare as a primary topic in today's session, let's try to analyze a simple scenario, how healthcare, or let's say it as a can be improvised by using AI. Take a scenario of a traditional approach. When a person gets sick, all right, that in the traditional scenario, what happens? Probably he has to look for a doctor. Maybe he may go with the recommendations from the peer group, maybe from his relatives or colleagues or whatever it is. Because at the first insight, first level, he may not be having a good insights of who is the best doctor, who is the best, which is the best hospital in that particular locality, or kind of thing. So obviously he has to depend upon the peer group. So he interacts with the peer group. Then probably peer group might say recommendation 1, recommendation 2, or recommendation 3. All right, he may go with the whatever the recommendations were given by the peer group. So the moment he visits a hospital, all right, in the first instance, even the doctor will not be knowing more in detail about what actually the disease he's what actually the problem he's facing. So what happens? The patient tries to communicate to the doctor, saying that this is the kind of symptoms I have. This is the kind of pain I'm going through. That. So at an instance, probably doctor might say, okay, this is the kind of disease, or this is the kind of treatment I have to move ahead. But it is only on a test basis. He may not be sure that exactly this is a kind of disease which the patient is facing. So what doctor does it is, probably he might give a couple of recommendations to him, saying that go for that test, go for this test, because doctor need to analyze. Because at a first instance, doctor cannot take a decision saying that this is the effect, or this is the implication, or this is the kind of disease. So what doctor does is he recommends patients saying that go for these kind of tests. Let me see the test results. Once after seeing the test results, probably I might predict, or I might guess what is the implication. On what is a disease actually the patient is going through that. So what patient does is he follows the doctor's instructions. He goes to the lab. He takes whatever the test is required. So what happens? He comes back with a test. Now, at times, doctor might be sure, yeah, this is actually kind of a infection area, or this is a kind of disease you're falling through. At times, doctor might not be sure about that. So what he does is, doctor might prescribe a medicines, a particular dosage of medicines, just to see how the patient's body is reacting to that. If it is curing, that is fine. If it is not curing, maybe after 10 days, he'll ask the patient to come back to see if it is not curing. Maybe he recommend a different medicine, or he recommends a let's say high dosage kind of thing. Right, and then it goes on. The process goes on. So basically, the point here I'm trying to convey to you guys is: so when a patient visits, doctor needs a time to understand what kind of disease a patient is going through. That not only that, doctor needs a time to recommend a particular drug to the patient. Maybe he might do a iteration 1 or iteration 2 or iteration 3. And then he might, the patient might get cured. So there's a time. It is a time driven, actually, time specific. Now, how AI can help in this? There are many ways AI can help in real time. Which the duration right? The time the patient is visiting the hospital and getting cured, the amount of time he is going through that pain or whatever can be reduced, right? And there are other services AI can provide, right? Keeping this as a base scenario, right?
Yeah, Vivek sir, sorry to disturb. I think slides are not moving.
No, I have not moved it. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm just in the disclaimer. I'm just trying to set the
Thank
base.
you. Continue.
Thank you. Thank you. So keeping this as a base underlying situation, when a patient visits, how we can smoothen the process, how we can smoothen the diagnosis step, or how we can smoothen the drug, or let's say recommendation, or probably the dosage, or sometimes probably what type of drug also, right? So how can we smoothen this process? How can we fasten this process also? That's where the AI comes into the play. There are many areas AI also plays in terms of robotics, in terms of many other sectors. Basically, we are trying to understand the base level of sector here. All right. So I divided the whole presentation into different 5 verticals where AI can give a possible contribution in the health sector. Let's see, the first area, the diagnosis process, right? So if you see this the diagram probably which has been given on the, it's basically on a time driven. When a patient visits, comes with a problem, right? When a patient experiences in a health problem, what happens? He has to spend some time, or he has to find out. He has to engage. The system has to engage him for some time, right? So that's again, it takes a time for the patient. After that, what happens when he meets doctor might do a critical interview process, or maybe a examination process. It might be a clinical, or it might be a physical examination, or it might be a consulting, or it might be a testing kind of thing. So the patient has to go through all this process. Both the doctor need to observe this. Now, the point here is, was the data collected at this level is alone enough for the doctor to understand what type of disease it is, what type of drug need to be given to the patient? At times, it depends on the experience of the doctors. At times, it depends on a trial and error basis, right? So majority of situations, not to blame anyone, majority of situations goes as a trial and error basis. That everyone follows that, right? Now, this is the major area where the doctor need to spend a time. Can we simplify this? Can AI contribute in this? Can AI contribute in this particular sector, so that whatever data collected from the patient, all right, and whatever the results are given from the lab can be used for the prediction in more accurately, right? So once the stage is done with let's say it as a more accurate level, the next process becomes more simple for the doctor. So communication of the diagnosis process, or treatment, or outcomes, or whatever it is, right? So in current scenario, where at which locations the major failures occurs? So one of the area where the major failure happens is the failure in engagement, right? Patient engagement. The amount of time doctor is trying to spend on the patient to understand, all right, what type of disease, or what is the kind of side effects he's going through, that what is his history, right? Maybe that one reason is the patient is not opening up with the doctor, or there is no historical records of the patients. But AI can contribute here. AI can get from the history, the combinations, whatever we have it, right, from the data sets, and it can come out with a proper engagement process. And there might be a failure in gathering the information about the patient. Integration, right, whatever the information is gathered, or interpretation in proper way, right? If it is an X disease, interpreting into the particular disease there's a gap, huge gap, there's a failure. So and another place where currently there's a failure is to establish or an explanation of health problem, a failure in communicating to the patient, right? What kind of drug he has to take it, what kind of dosage he has to take it, and what are the implications, what are the kind of steps he has to take it. So there's a failure on that, right? Obviously, everybody will agree that. right? So AI can contribute in these areas, right? To engage the patient, to collect the information accurately, to match with the history if it is not available, to match with the different data sets if it is not available, come out and say this kind of a prediction, or this might be one of the prediction, right? Which eases the doctor's job. All right. So one area AI can contribute is improvising the diagnosis process. The other area the AI can contribute is drug design or personalized treatment, right? Now, in the traditional environment, what happens if I get a fever? Everyone, let's take a paracetamol, right? As a first step. So that's a standard, let's say it as a treatment, right? So sometimes it might be a high dosage for us. Sometimes it might be less dosage. Don't know how our body is going to react to that. So can AI contribute? Can AI help us to understand the genome process or metabolism of the patient, or let's say it is the DNA process of the patient, and help us to give a proper drug for the patient, whether it can be a standard or let's say high dosage or alternative drug, or let's say candidate wise or patient wise, or let's say individual patient unique drug dosage, right? Can AI contribute by understanding the candidate's patient's history? So that is one area where health sector is looking for through AI or through, let's say, machine learning algorithms. Can a personalized treatment can be given to the patients? Again, as I said, drug discovery, a combination of, so based on a patient situation, probably the algorithm can say, can design, right? Can come out with a proper combination, proper drug or for the or a new drug for a particular patient, which is unique for him. So there's one of the area AI can contribute. Obviously, there is a medical image where humans or human cannot identify the proper area of where it got infected. AI can do a using a deep learning. It can identify more insights of a let's say a CT scan or whatever the X-rays. So AI can contribute in analyzing these X-rays and trying to identify where exactly the problem is. For a human, it might be a difficult, but for AI, by using a deep learning, or let's say it is a more any classification model or any models, it will be more easy for the AI to contribute in this sector, right? In a medical image also. Or the outset, let's say it is a simplifying the user task or a treatment or a whole that process. Now, let's say there's a simple application. What we use in Singapore in a day-to-day life is the government provides a mobile health application. All right, it keeps tracks individual day-to-day activity in terms of physical fitness. All right, so it recommends the physical fitness. What are the activities I have to complete, and probably there will be obviously there will be a rewards for that also, right? So the one way the government tracks is every user's every citizen health, primarily focused on youth, how their health is going on from now, or let's say it is this year, next year. So they're different by using a mobile applications. AI will analyze. So individual care, the health application gives you a recommendation to the individual human or let's citizen, right, based on their day-to-day activities, to the level saying that it goes and says today you have not done enough exercise, probably you have to reduce your intake this much percentage, or skip the intake for today's, or probably your sleep time is this, which best is Apple Watch, which gives us an alert, a similar kind of way. So simplifying the administrative task, AI can contribute very much. So these are the couple of areas where AI can contribute. And in our lab, what are the areas? Couple of areas what we are working. We are, let's say it is our research engineers are more focused on the BTech graduate students or master students. Part of this project is the first project we are trying to engage is a fall detection using a machine learning model. So what happens is what observed is when a patient is admitted in the hospital, right? At times there won't be anybody in next to the patient, or even if there is somebody, maybe they might be sleeping and we may not be able to observe the patient movement. when the patient goes for the a toilet, or when the patient moves from one place to another place, there might be a chances of the patient may fall down, right? So in a hospital environment or in a designated environment. So we wanted an AI model which can predict the movement of a patient, right? So we use a video sensors, and we also use a couple of gateways, right? Which captures the sensor captures the patient movement, and then we use a machine learning models to compare their day-to-day movement and to identify an event which is not on a regular basis. All right, and then immediately the response was given to the concerned person saying that there's a fall of the patient and it has to be addressed immediately. So this is a one area which we are currently working on. And behavior risk detection, probably how a patient is behaving with a peer group, and was he so kind of a sentiment analysis on a patient. How is his reaction when a certain discussion happens, whether he's sometimes the patient may open up, sometimes patient may not open up, right? So there are a couple of modeling algorithms which we are trying to understand the behavior of a patient in a given a group for a set of situations, and then we are trying to analyze how he's responding kind of situation, right? So we use a augmentative exchange. We try to map with the arguments, and then using a visualization audio capture sensors, and then we apply a machine learning models, and then we see how the response is going to be, and then we're going to alert the people accordingly. So this is one of the area which we are working on currently. And physical hazards, even again, all this projects which we are taking up now, or which is undergo, it is meant for the hospital environment, especially. Maybe later it can be given to a particular designated environments or customized, but primarily we are focusing on a hospital environment. So physical hazards, right? So what happens is in a hospital where a patient where he is staying, there might be some equipments which might cause disturbance to the patient. Example, it might be a physical hazard, or maybe a electrical, or maybe a sensors, or maybe something else, right? So we need to observe that. We need to detect those kind of errors, hazards, and then we need to alert the people. So for that, what we are doing is, for the hazard, we try to place different objects in the environment, maybe a regular objects and unique objects, and maybe a new objects which is primarily treated as a hazard to the patient, and then see our model can capture that, and model can understand and give a proper recommendations, or let's say it as a reporting of those particular hazards. Right? There's a one area which vertical which we are working on. So again, the another area, this is a prime, very focused area which we are working in, is nurse profile recognition. So usually what happens is, in a healthcare, the amount of time spent on a patient matters by the nurse or whoever is the concerned responsible person, right? So at times what happens, there won't be any time spent to the patient. Patient is left alone. So we wanted to come out with a model which can monitor the nurse behavior with the patient, and what type of activities engaged with the patient, and what are the movements of a nurse with respect to that particular patient, and profiling it. And we give a feedback to the nurse saying that, why don't you engage the patient in this direction? Why don't you engage the patient? Because this is a combination of how the patient is behaving in a group, and then feeding back to the nurse as an input. Why don't you engage the patient in this particular movement? So this is one kind of work which we are focusing on. The other work, we wanted to identify authorized and unauthorized people in that particular room, whether they belong to the patient or whether they don't belong to the patient. Maybe we use a sensors, maybe we use whether the authorized doctor enters into the room, or authorized nurse enters into the room, or authorized whatever the whoever might be enters to the room. We wanted to analyze that. We wanted to report it also. We use a ML model there. And connectivity, engaging the patient, maybe giving a informatical information, maybe in terms of a graphical engagement or to the patient, and what type of videos can be played for the patient, what type of let's say it as a tips can be given through the video engagement. So this is the one area which we are trying to focus. And last, we are also trying to focus on telehealth, right? Kind of a where models can help, as I said, with personal drug design and as well as the workflow process, right? Where the model, this is primarily which is available in our lab, which will make sure that at a particular time there's a individual patient drug is delivered in a dosage level, right? So it just interacts with the nurse, and nurse feeds the input to the robot, and then it moves on to the pharmacy to collect those medicines and then deliver it to the patient's home. So these are the couple of areas which we are currently working on in the lab. This is a recent put all together. I just wanted to give you this understanding from this video. Probably you can see whatever I've explained now, which we are trying to work on that. Just spend 2 minutes time on this video. Hope audio is working fine.
Dieter has been awaiting a lung
Yes, sir, it's working.
Yes, thank you.
transplant. Michael Dieter has been awaiting a lung transplant at the University of Florida Health Center since December. I'm what you call high flow air. And because of that, I can't sustain myself at home. A dedicated team of doctors and nurses attend to him day and night. But that's not all. Sensors and cameras track Dieter's every move in this smart intensive care unit, from vital signs to facial expressions and everything in between.
Every place in this room will sense something about you. Is this enough light? Is this enough noise? Are you okay? You know, are you moving enough? Are you in your bed? Are you out of the bed? I think that's the future of how we will design hospitals.
More than 350 gigabytes of information per patient goes into a central computer, where artificial intelligence then processes the data. We can look at the patient and go, they're moving a lot. There's something going on there, or their face has a certain grimace to it that they normally have. Is it possible that it could tell you before I even know that I'm having problems?
Yes, 100%. We will be able to decipher complex features, complex emotions like agitation or hunger.
Funded by the National Institutes of Health, the high-tech experiment enters its third year. Researchers are still teaching the technology what certain actions like sitting and standing might indicate. The hope that AI will soon be able to provide real-time healthcare recommendations. Nurses, doctors, we spend a considerable amount of time paperwork, translating the data we get.
You will actually have a representation of the data in a way that you as a human can just understand and action.
But will this new technology replace the need for humans in the hospital altogether?
They are very simplistic models compared to what our brains are doing. And I don't think that we should be worried about humans being replaced anytime soon.
That this technology does take big burden off the physicians and nurses and provide them time to actually engage what we are here for, taking care of the patients.
A new holistic approach to healthcare where humans and computers work hand in hand. Dr. John Torres, NBC News, Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah. So these are the few areas probably the new researchers can focus the areas. Whoever is just taking up the research as a problem, or let's say trying to find out the problem statements in the AI with the healthcare. These are the few listings which I recommend you guys to can focus on. All right. Thanks. That's it from my side. Probably if you have any queries, I'll be happy to answer. Okay. Hopefully you guys get the recordings. There's many participants ask for the recordings. Motivate to help the humans patients. Okay.
So Bhanu Sharma is saying session was interesting, and Srinidhi is very interesting.
Because of time constraint, I could not go in detail, technical details, because one is time constraint, one is kind of an IPR. I'm not supposed to go in a more architecture level.
Right.
How many of you know that there is a slight difference on AI for a healthcare, AI for a medical?
Sir, somebody is asking, how can I combine blockchain with AI in healthcare?
Blockchain now is kind of one of the recent work I encountered with the blockchain with healthcare is the food delivery, what happens to the patients, right? So as part of their stay in hospital, right? There's a food which given to the patients, and blockchain is helping in streamlining or identifying the let's say it as a what do you say, expiry of a food or quality of a food, or the supplier level also. So blockchain is helping in that.
Mr. B. Lata, Dr. B. Lata, who will be the respondents to the study, for the study?
Respondents, I'm not sure what is that you mean. You on whom we are gonna test it?
Maybe he or she is trying to ask to whom you are testing.
As of my understanding, and again, there are a lot of rules from the government. We are not supposed to test on humans at the first level, and at the same time, we are not testing on any animals. Also, we are testing in a created environment. So it's a kind of a synthetic environment.
Somebody is asking, AI used to treat patients, something like that. Yeah, AI use
anything. AI with AI, anything is possible. So if you wanted to perform a deep analysis, AI is best. Medical
is it possible to find the nutrition values in the patient's food?
Yes.
Oh, this is a question from Prabhu.
Absolutely. And you know that certain hospitals prescribe the nutrition parameters also.
Somebody responded to your question, Mr. Bhanu Sharma.
Healthcare and medical. Bhanu Sharma sir, I've seen your response. Healthcare is much broader idea, of which medical care is only a subset of constitutes, and the remaining 80 to 90% is of health outcomes. Yeah. See, whenever I speak to a couple of research engineers, newly appointed research engineers, when I ask them what is your view on AI towards the medical, the first thing comes into their mind is robots doing a operation, or robots trying to diagnose. Right. That's only in the mindset. So that is one part. There's the different verticals, as I explained. There are many other verticals also.
Vivek sir, this is one of the interesting question. How to differentiate AI with deep learning in healthcare?
How to differentiate AI with deep learning in healthcare? Deep learning is part of AI. You cannot differentiate it.
That's why I thought to take this question.
Thank you, sir.
Acha, how the AI can apply in the civil engineering field research areas? This is a question from Meena Vayar.
Meena ma'am, I'll give you one example which I have come across recently in a US environment. There are a couple of buildings which in NUS or NTU have designed, right? The architecture has come out from the AI. Though there is the building is let's say how do I put it, half a football court, all right, and completely closed environment. All right. And even if you stand in the middle of the court, even in the closed environment, you feel there is an airflow. All right. The structure is made in such a way that it predicts, or whatever the way the wind flows, right, it is captured and it has passed through the building. So the engineer says that they have used AI model there to understand the wind flow, and the structure is built accordingly. Is that answers your query, ma'am? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So can I hand over back to Preeti?
Preeti, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your insightful address at the faculty development program on the importance of AI and ML. I'm genuinely grateful for the time and effort you invested in sharing your knowledge with us. Once again, thank you, sir. Thank you all for attending today's session. I hope you will join the further sessions. Our tomorrow's sessions will start from 9:30 a.m. and all the details will be shared in respective WhatsApp group. I'm requesting all to join the WhatsApp group for the further information regarding the program, where we are sharing all the materials, data, and the recorded sessions. Thank you.